Hello, it's been a little while. The last video I posted, I released my book. Wow. I'm looking back. It's not perfect. I don't really care though. It's not about me. Um, I actually recorded two videos that I don't know if I'm going to post. Today is May 5th. It for about 2 more hours. Eh. That's okay. This has been an idea that stirred up in my mind for a while, and I've never taken the time to explain it. It's actually kind of short, hopefully. Sorry, I know. It's the end of the day. My hair is a little bit greasy. Oh no. Or it's not entirely completely kept. Here, I will point my camera up. Wow. Wow. Um, so, anyways, this idea is actually kind of simple, and this one's going to be unscripted. But I am trying to work on some scripted videos because I know better. I've watched my stuff; it's not impressive. I understand why no one's sticking around. I'm gonna stop trying to touch it, stop trying to fix it, because my setup is really simple. The I Our economic crisis that we're in currently is solvable. It requires a little bit of pressure on our politicians, quite a bit, and a lot of discipline. And the idea is simple, but in practice, it is very hard to implement because it requires that we all collectively do it, and it's something that we are not predisposed to do based on our current social conditioning. And that is radical contentment. Take out no more debts, other than like if you're buying a house, if you have that capability. I'm not going to tell you no. You should buy a house, especially in the current society we live in, if you can afford it. Take out no extra debts. If you own something, do not try to replace it. Try to fix it. If you get a pay raise at work, pay off your debts. To explain what I'm talking about, we have a twofold issue. The companies that we work for are wage stealing from their employees by intentionally, as a blanket. They're all the major companies are doing this. They are buying back their own stocks instead of paying their employees fair market value for their labor. And because it's a collective of the companies doing it, like the government should be able to look at what's happening and say, this is a labor monopsony that these companies are doing, and they should go in and they should start fining these companies for literally half their income, half their profits, and from the last, like, I don't know, 10 years or so. That's not going to fix everything, but it will set a standard. The current economic crisis looks like the top 1% own, like, own 90% of the wealth, and the bottom 90% own the last 10% of the wealth. And then out of that, you could graduate it, and it looks really like asymptotal as to how much wealth is owned and how it's distributed. And it's absolutely nutty. So there are people on the planet that make what I make in 1 year in a couple of minutes. I have no argument against people making loads and loads of money. My argument is they should compensate their employees fair wages to do so, and they shouldn't be allowed to manipulate markets. If you need the cash and you have to go to your shareholders and be like, hey, I don't have the cash, I'm willing to sell more shares and dilute the current market of shares in my company. So I'm sorry to you guys, but I'm going to have to dilute the shares. Go ahead and try to sue me. I need the money. If you try to stop me, I'm going to go to the bank and file bankruptcy, and you'll get zero. This is the way like businesses are supposed to work. If you have to sell shares or take out loans against shares that you own as a company, you are running a poor business model, and you should fail, and your shareholders should go after you. The fact that businesses are now almost entirely run on debt should be very concerning. And the way this all works, this is really important for me to describe to you the way our economy works. The top 10% of income earners, that's what, like $400,000 plus a year, they own a lot of assets. The top 1%, most of their assets are illiquid. They have a theoretical net worth based upon the value of their stock. And that value is theoretical based upon how much people are willing to buy their stocks for. So someone like Elon Musk may have a couple grand liquid, and the vast majority of his multi-billion-dollar net worth is in stocks and other properties. And the way they even have any money, let's just be honest here, is they are taking out loans against their own property, against their stocks and physical tangible properties. And the banks are very happy to give out these loans because they are expecting to be paid back because these guys are worth so much. And they are taking a gamble, and they see it as a low risk gamble that even if these guys default, they are just buying the stocks for their face value at that rate. Like, that's what they think is going on. Like, literally, the vast majority of people who earn $400,000 or more a year, a lot of that value is hidden in equity as bonuses. So what's going on is the vast majority of people, instead of selling their stocks and having to pay taxes on them as a way to avoid taxes, they are instead taking out loans against them. And here's the thing, banks start having to worry, how do I put this? Eventually, the amount of money banks loan out make them... The bank doesn't care about your $6,000 loan. If you don't pay back, that's only $6,000. The bank really cares about you paying back a $1 million, $2 million, $5 million loan. At some point, the bank's loan is more of a liability than you paying it back. So oftentimes, people get sweetheart deals instead of filing for bankruptcy. The bank doesn't want to clear out those debts because that is massive losses. So instead, the bank will restructure loans and give extremely favorable lower interest rates and extremely favorable payout calendars for the wealthy who come upon hard times or whatever. It sounds really corrupt, but you have to understand the greedy bankers at the top of the banking hierarchy see the massive amounts of interest they're going to get on these loans, and they forget about all the risk. Or they know about it, but they're just like, these guys make how much a year? Nah. We're going to loan them the money, and we'll just set aside some of their stock. Because even if they, like, as long as they don't put all of the stock into that single loan, that stock should hold some value. My claim is that if we stop taking out loans and we stop buying new shit all the time, companies who require new purchases will start to go out of business. And banks who require the lower hanging banks that give out loans to us peons will start to go under, because they're no longer making the money, and they have bills to pay. Same with those companies that require new purchases. Like, for example, if you go out and buy a car from a dealer, a new car, the dealer makes money on creating the loan and selling it to a bank. They get fees and stuff from the bank for that. And the bank just buys that loan outright from the dealer. And the dealer upcharges you to make sure there's some cushion in there. And most of that's just that way, like, they offset the amount of money that they have to spend on upkeep and maintenance on the vehicles and on salesmen and property taxes and yada yada yada. It's mostly that they are trying to get as high of a amount for you such that the bank feels comfortable taking the margin. They can buy at roughly the car's actual price from the dealer, and then the dealer will, like, as part of that, the bank will give the dealer some extra cash for securing the loan. The new car that you drive off the lot immediately loses value, which is funny. By the way, that should be an absolutely stupid idea for banks, but because banks keep giving out the loans and people keep paying them off, the banks are okay with it because people keep paying them off. Because people like these fancy cars, expensive cars. And oftentimes these loans will be like 26-28% interest over 3 or 4 years, and you actually end up paying, or like over 5 years, if you are an irresponsible spender, or if you're a high risk lendee, if you're a high risk recipient of the money, the banks will sometimes get 4 times the amount of value that they just spent on that vehicle, on that loan. The solution really comes down to eliminate your spending. This is like, I'm not saying live frugally, but like stop spending money on things you don't need to. Stop taking out loans. The idea is to choke the economic systems at our level such that the larger economic systems above feel it when the lower ones start to collapse. And by the way, these will trigger FDIC insurance payouts to the banks, by the way. Because the banks are going to be burning money that isn't theirs. And as soon as someone comes in and says, I'd like to take out $30,000 to buy a new car, which, by the way, this isn't entirely saying don't go buy a new car. It's saying don't take out debt to do so. Debt is immoral because you're loaning against your future, which that time is better used not working, by the way. You're betting against your future time that you are you're not betting against it. You are paying your future time for an immediate gratification. I do not suggest you buy a new car, but I won't be mad at you if you buy a new car and you have the cash laying around. Very few people have cash laying around for a house. So, like, I'm not even against people buying houses. My claim is that we are currently spending all sorts of money on Netflix, on all sorts of consumer goods. And not just consumer goods, we are in the fake and meaningless economy where people are buying Labubus. And people are going into massive debt on scalping Pokemon, unopened Pokemon products. We live in I'm not going to quote the kids. I would love to, but this is YouTube. We live in a fake and meaningless economy that has been created for us by our economic overlords. You have to look at our economy through a Gnostic's eyes to understand what's going on. And the solution is literally just find someone that you can a bit more than tolerate and build a romantic relationship with, settle down, have kids, save up, buy a house. Scrape by, and the economic system will have to contort to our will at some point. But it only works if we do it unionized. We say, I am not spending any more of your worthless cash on your worthless shit and your overpriced garbage of vehicles and your overpriced garbage of new build houses and your overpriced blah 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 blah, or worthless blah 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 blah. We are going to try to grow some of our own food. We are going to mitigate our cost of living, and we are not going to endorse our current economic way of living. And when we stop buying, companies will stop making profit. And at some point they have to pay people to stay in the building to do the job. There's no amount of AI that will solve this. AI is a pipe dream. They are using it as an excuse to eliminate white-collar jobs and replace them with lower-wage imported workers, mostly from India. The hard labor jobs were always going to be going to high school graduates who saw that their time was best used earning income through hard labor, and to Latin workers that come up and cross the border. And that does not mean illegally. That means that these people have seen exactly how much money they can make by doing jobs we don't want to do. Whether they be high risk, like roofing, they be very unsanitary, like plumbing, whether they... HVAC is actually pretty safe. Most people, like a lot of the workers that are HVAC, at least in my area, aren't Latin. They are very clearly white men who see that the amount of money that they can get. There's a lot of manual labor that is being earned by people who see that their time is worth money. That system can eventually change, but for right now, the solution to our current economic problem is, as a collective, we need to stop taking out massive amounts of debt and start being happy with what we already have. Pay off the debts we already have, eliminate new income streams for banks. Here's part of the reason why. Businesses work on loan. A lot of businesses work on debt. They see a near zero margin because they do so much transactionally. They buy their stock in bulk, and they pay out all their people on one day, and they just do all of it in bulk. And then as the sales come in, it takes a couple days to come in to pay off their loan, their line of credit, and then they reap in the rest in profit. And it goes, a lot of companies can do it weekly. I work for Kroger, so it's weekly. What happens is, if you're not buying as much, companies, first of all, they cannot afford to continue to raise their prices. If people aren't buying as much, eventually people will just stop buying the expensive stuff and they'll just have to stop carrying it. And watch what happens when shelf space starts to look uniform. Let's go with uniform. Imagine there being only the cheapest boxes of cereal on the shelf. Imagine only that's a bad one, because cereal will last for a while before they have to expire it out. Imagine what happens when they eliminate what's a really popular item that has multiple brands and multiple offerings. Imagine what happens when Ben & Jerry's leaves and they fill in with more private selection ice cream. Or imagine what happens when they have to cut private selection ice cream and go straight to Kroger brand, and they have to eliminate the amount of flavors they offer. That's probably the first thing that'll happen. They'll start to eliminate some of the flavors and streamline it to the most bought flavors to keep profit lines driving. And then what happens is eventually they'll just eliminate certain brands from their shelves who don't sell. And those brands will go under, and that'll be the obvious sign. And then they'll just liquidate what little left they have of that brand, and then they will fill it in. And there's not going to be new competition when people are seeing that the market is already shaky, because people aren't buying a whole bunch. Eventually the prices will just drop to meet our demand. And if we continue to hold on, more and more prices will just drop. And there won't be enough money for buybacks. Now, will there? And what happens is, some of us will lose our jobs, but eventually the companies are going to collapse, and there won't be enough media to continue to blast, these companies. There won't be enough GDP go up to pretend that these companies are getting anything. Like, as companies collapse, sure, GDP go up, maybe, but those numbers are lying, because they were always designed to lie. They were always designed for the elites to look at a large array of the country and see roughly the direction of growth. And that sort of worked early. But as GDP per capita went up, they started stagnating and pulling back our wages. And you can guess where all that money went. It went straight into stock buybacks. There's reasons why companies are worth 4 to 10 times the amount they were when they first launched. And it has very little to do with how productive they are. I mean, it does, but a lot of the times companies literally they see us as a corner to cut and as an expense that they want to drive down at all possibilities. Our current economic system does not work because the uber wealthy continue to grab more money. You should see these people as fat, gluttonous pigs, and it's okay to let them starve. What does this mean? Stop using Twitter. If you don't like Elon Musk, don't use Twitter, or I guess X now. Don't buy Teslas. You're gonna the rich people are. By the way, how do I put this? I've said this before, and I'm gonna say this again. Pareto's law still applies to debt. The richest people are the most indebted. So the most indebted companies will start to suffer if we stop buying from them. Or even if we just buy less because we are content. You see how this works? My suggestion is contentment. And the way this actually works is if we go to our neighbor and introduce ourselves, and to the next neighbor, and to the next neighbor, and we start to loan each other tools, and we make good friends. We have them over for pitch-ins, and we build communities. And then you don't have to worry. First of all, you're going to worry a whole lot less about crime because you know the person next door, and if their kid breaks into a tool shed and steals a $200 tool, you go to that neighbor and be like, hey, we caught your kid on camera, and that kid's never going to do that again, and you're going to get your tool back. If it's someone you don't know, the whole community is going to see who that person is, and they're going to get caught. Communities eliminate crime. The wealth discrepancy is, while it's not a causal thing, it is, for those of you who don't know, crime is the highest in the most wealth discrepancy places on the planet. So New York, there's massive amounts of crime. I'm betting in Dubai, there's massive amounts of crime. And if you're wondering about reporting, it's probably underreported. And this is because people who are disconnected they decide they need to buy more. People who feel disconnected from the community to fill in where they feel empty. And as the community starts to degrade and the connections degrade, you can think of it like an organism, and the cells, because they are low on energy, they stop communicating, and eventually the cells stop acting as though they have neighbors, and they just isolate to themselves. You can think of it like that. As people start to isolate, the community stops, and therefore, as the community stops, everyone's only looking out for themselves. It's a community connection issue when the crime rises, and the community is falling apart because of the economic hardship in the area. When the top 10% are driving up the prices for everyone else, the bottom 90%, as you go down the economic income percentiles, the social networks start to collapse, and the individuals start to intentionally isolate and intentionally become selfish. They want to get their stuff first and screw anyone else who's in their way. So what I'm basically claiming is that, like, our world would actually just work better. I'm not saying we should find God. I think God is dead and we are suffering from it. And the solution, my first solution, is try to find people that you like. Start hanging out with them. Start inviting them over. Start being content with what you have in your life. Don't make it a competition to see who owns more, who is better. Invite them over and share what you have. Because people are more interesting than just numbers on a screen and just things in their garage and in their house. And the more we start to see the beauty of the individual sitting across from us, or sitting beside us, that we've invited into our lives, the harder it is for our economic system to function.